Hello and welcome to the triumphant return of Saturday morning nostalgia. As anybody that's been watching the series so far will know, I took a bit of a break during the whole of August really, and a little bit of July. I was having back problems which was making it difficult for me to sort of go through boxes, and physio has sorted that out. And also in August I went away to the UK for a couple of weeks, so we're now back in business and we're starting off basically where we left off, and now the year is 2012. So we looked at, last series we were looking at 2011 and we're now into 2012, and this is the quarter from January to March. So there were two main things that came out. But of course, within one of those things, Dark Ascension, there was a lot of products. What you're now starting to see is, in addition to booster packs and the intro decks, sets starting to feature these things called event decks. And Dark Ascension had an event deck in it. So the two things that came out in that quarter were Dark Ascension itself on February the 3rd and the Duel decks, Venser versus Koth, on March the 30th. So let's have a look first of all at the stuff that was coming out within the set, within Dark Ascension. For this, same as previous sets, I opened a booster pack, a fat pack as it was called at the time, and a number of boosters. I also went to the pre-release, so I would have opened some packs there. And as I think I've started showing you with the booster packs, you can actually, if you're careful, prise these open, and you can see here we have a full-length picture of the main protagonist in here, Sorin Markov, I believe. So the set itself, it was a small set. It was the second set of the Innistrad block. So Dark Ascension had 158 cards. There were 12 mythic rares, 38 rares, 44 uncommons and 64 commons in this set. There were the regular boosters, so that's with 15 cards and a +1, like an advert card in there. We have there were 6 card boosters as well that are available. There were 5 intro packs that were in the set, 2 event decks and the fat pack. The main themes and mechanics, as you sort of look through the set, you'll start to notice what was in here. So there were double-faced cards in here. There were curses, there was a graveyard theme, there was a tribal theme, and within that tribal theme there was a lot of humans in there. Keyword abilities to look out for as we're going through the cards. Fateful Hour was one, Flashback was another. We also had Morbid in here, Transform and Undying. So here in the fat pack we've got a little bit about Sorin Markov, top 10 coolest Dark Ascension cards. So just going through: Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, Huntmaster of the Fells, Ravager of the Fells, which was a double face card, Increasing Devotion, Vortipede, Mykius the Unhallowed, Increasing Vengeance, Ravenous Demon transforming into Archdemon of Greed, Secrets of the Dead, Lore Cathar transforming into Unhallowed Cathar, and Strangleroot Geist. One thing that you sometimes find in Magic product, particularly the fat packs, is that they'll often present this sort of a different way of playing Magic. So they had a thing in here called the Fat Pack Bash. nice thing to see in this particular, what is actually this? Oh, the player's guide. There we go. In the player's guide is the combo corner, and then we move on to the card encyclopedia. So there were cycles in the set. There was a set of flashback cycles at there was 5 of those at rare. Some tribal creatures, 4 at mythic rare. They were sort of allied pair tribal creatures. There was ally flashback cards at common. There was enemy flashback at uncommon. There were tribal lords. There was 4 of those at uncommon. And there were enemy utility lands, 2 at rare. Actually, I just wanted to see. So towards the end of this, you're going to hit. So yeah, here we've got the uncommons and the mythic rares that I was talking about in terms of the tribal themed ones. So these are quite useful because you sort of use these as often indicator cards. They can be particularly useful, particularly the uncommons, in sort of presenting you with a particular avenue to go down in terms of drafting. So we had Dorograph Captain, which was a zombie soldier, which was a blue-black, which gave other zombies, other zombie creatures you control got +1/+1, so that acted as a zombie lord. There was Drogskull Captain, which was the white-blue equivalent, which was a spirit lord. Let me have a look at the other uncommon that would have been there. There was Immerwolf, so that was the red-green uncommon with Intimidate, which was a wolf and werewolf lord. And then there was a Stormkirk Captain, which was a vampire lord, and that was black-red. And then you can see they also had tribal matters cards at mythic, as I was saying. So you've got Falkenrath the Aristocrat, was the black-red. There was Drogskull Reaver, which was the white-blue. Havengar Leash was the blue-black one, and Sorin Lord of Innistrad was a white-black one there. But also you had Huntmaster of the Fells, which was the human werewolf, so the werewolf tribal. Obviously Sorin Lord of Innistrad was the lead card really in this. Was the lead planeswalker. So let's have a look at some of the rares that I pulled in the boosters that I opened. So we got, I think, a foil. I'd actually pulled a foil Break of Day. So in this particular group here are both rares, mythics and foils. And that was one that had that Fateful Hour on it, where if you have 5 or less life, those creatures also are indestructible this turn. So what Fateful Hour did is, if generally if your life was low, then it extended the ability on a card. Increasing Devotion was in the set, and that had I was mentioning about, there was a series of flashback cards at rare, and that was one of them. So that was so the card cost 3 and 2 white to cast, but the flashback cost was 7 and 2 white. So there were on colour flashback costs. Got Requiem Angel in the set. Sudden Disappearance was another one. Legendary creature in the form of Thalia, Guardian of Thrabin, which made non-creature spells cost one more to cast. Call to the Kindred, Counter Lash, Increasing Confusion. So this is another one of these rare cards with flashback on. So interesting with this one, it was an X and a blue to cast regularly, and then X and a blue for the flashback cost. So a target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If Increasing Confusion was cast from a graveyard, that player puts twice that many cards into his or her graveyard instead. And there was, I mentioned the cycle of curses in here. So this one was the black one, the Curse of Misfortunes. And those were at rare. Falkenrath Torturer, Gruesome Discovery, had Morbid on it. Got Increasing Ambition. And Ravenous Demon. This was actually the card for the pre-release there, which was actually on the 28th of January, so that would have been a week before the actual release of the set, and that transformed into Archdemon of Greed. Now I think at that point, if my memory serves me correctly, you couldn't play the promo in the pre-release. Got Zombie Apocalypse in the set. Another curse there, Curse of Bloodletting. We've got a foil, another foil double-sided, but this is a common. This was a regular one pulled out of a pack. Mondronan's Shaman. Moonveil Dragon was a mythic in here. Got another, there's Ghoultree in foil. Ghoultree costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. Another foil there, that's a common, which was Grim Flowering. Hollowhenge Beast, a Wolf-Bidden Captive. I've pulled a mythic here from one of the boosters I opened, a Falkenrath Aristocrat, 2 black red for a 4/1 creature vampire flying haste. Sacrifice a creature. Falkenrath Aristocrat is indestructible this turn. If the sacrificed creature was a human, put a +1/+1 counter on Falkenrath Aristocrat. So you can see that sort of human matters theme, and in the set there was ways in which you could facilitate certain extra abilities, I believe, if cards were human. Valk of the Archangel. I remember I mentioned there was a couple of utility lands, and this was one of them with enemy colours on it. So you tapped it, add 1 to your mana pool, 2 white-black tap. Creatures you control gain Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. So other notable cards in the set, we saw the we saw when I was looking through the player's guide, there was things like Huntmaster of the Fells. There were things like Gravecrawler, Geralf's Messenger, Gravedigger's Cage, Grafdigger's Cage, Lingering Souls, Huntmaster of the Fells, Alberus the Blinding Blade, I think it was called, Tragic Slip, and Faithless Looting. Some cards to sort of watch out for. So I'm going to go through now some of the commons in the set and uncommons before I sort of move over to the intro packs and the event decks. So just quickly looking through some white cards on here. I'm going to just zoom in. You can see this easier. So we look through. We've got Bar the Door, Break of Day in here. So we're just going through in alphabetical order with these commons and uncommons. Burden of Guilt, Curse of Exhaustion, Elgod Inquisitor was in here. And you can see again with the smaller set, obviously I'm going to get a lot more duplicates of cards because as I'm opening the same amount of boosters as I always do, I'm going to see more duplicates of certain cards, particularly at the lower rarities. Faith Shields. You see another card with Fateful Hour, caring about your life count basically. Yeah, Gather the Townsfolk. See, obviously Faithful Hour was definitely very heavily present in white in this set. Governey Iron Rule. In some instances, Faithful Hour was the only ability on the card. It didn't really enhance anything. It didn't enhance any other ability that was on the card. It was the sort of lone ability that only triggered under certain circumstances. Obviously, as I mentioned with Tribal, and if you've seen the sort of review of the quarter that contained Innistrad, that certain tribes were in certain colours. So in white we're seeing a lot of spirits here, but also a lot of humans in here. There's another spirit, Niblis of the Mist. There's a Niblis of the Urn as well, uncommon there. Ray of Revelation, Sanctuary Cat, a couple of cats, one in white, one in black. And in any set, it's not unusual to see a griffin in white. And we've got our sort of typical pump spells that you might see in white. So again, in any set, there's certain reoccurring themes outside of the theme of the set that you tend to see in certain colours. We've got Artful Dodge here, Bone to Ash, Chant of the Skitsfang, Chill of Foreboding, Divination was in here, card draw in blue, Griptide, Bounce Spell, Headless Scab. So we've got zombies in blue. There's a sorcery with a different colour flashback. So that was a thing in the set where you had the original casting cost was in one colour, and then you had so in this case the allied enemy colour to blue, which would be red, as the flashback cost. We're seeing Flash in blue here, and we've got spirits. Obviously blue white spirits were a thing. We've got zombies because black blue zombies were a thing. Lots of scabs. Shriekgeist. So if you're a fan of blue white flyers, then yeah, you were happy in this particular set. Oh, here's Undying on here. So with Undying, when this creature dies, if it has no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with the +1/+1 counter on it. So it came in as a 2/2. When it died, came back as a 3/3. But then if it was killed again, that would be it basically. And we've seen that, cards that do similar things like that in Magic, which, come back in some form after the first time they're killed. And counters are a good way of sort of managing that. Oh, here's the other cat I was talking about. So this was Black Cat. Chosen to mark off. We're seeing our double face cards here in black. Curse of Thirst, enchantments, vampires. So vampires are a black-red thing, so we'll see them in this colour obviously. So a card with Morbid on it. So if a creature died this turn, instead that player reveals his or her hand. You choose 2 cards from it, then that player discards those cards. Harrowing Journey. Got Intimidate because we're in black. Well, here's another card with a black casting cost but a blue flashback cost. So this would be an allied colour one. Here's the black creature with Undying on it. Slightly Skull. More enchantments. This is a pretty popular card in the set. It's this Tragic Slip. So single black, the target creature gets -1/-1. But if Morbid was triggered, so if a creature died this turn, and it can be any creature, it does -13/-13. It gives a creature -13/-13. Undying Evil gave creatures undying. And then we've got Vengeful Vampire, another card with undying on it. Moving on to stuff in red that we got. So, Blood Feud. And so we're in red, we see vampires. We also see +1/+1 counters. Here's a cool card, Faithless Looting. So with this one, flashback cost same as the casting cost in terms of the colour. Obviously slightly more expensive as with most flashback. So for a single red you get to draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So this is sort of looting. And flashback for 2 and a red. So you can cast this card from the graveyard for its flashback cost, then exile it. Fires of Undeath. So this one does have a flashback cost, but again it's different colour, and in this case it's red-black, so it's allied colours. I think it's always interesting actually when you're, just as an aside, when you're drafting and you're trying to look for pointers, often it's really cool to look for indicators like that to see how are the casting costs related, is design and development trying to sort of, not force you is the wrong word, but sort of gently move you down certain avenues when you're drafting. And there's certain indicators that come out. Some are really obvious, like the presence of certain lords in the set are uncommon, but just other things that are probably obviously equally obvious, things like are there different casting costs for different abilities and things like that, and even down to sort of subtleties like the artwork sometimes give you indicators for things. We've got devils in red, werewolves are a thing in this set still, so I transform it in red. Do we see any red-green stuff in here? There's a red card with Undying. Another card with flashback, but this is on colour flashback. Enchantments, obviously a thing in red. And again, as we're flicking through this, and I've mentioned this on numerous videos, always watch out for the classic, on colour things that occur, and how those cards get adjusted based on the power and the general theme of the set. Maybe sometimes they get slightly stronger. Often they put caveats on them. Obviously, they've always got to be careful. If they start making a super strong card that is a classic theme for a certain colour outside of the theme of the deck, then that could distort other formats apart from just the drafting experience. So they have to obviously be mindful of things like that. Rack with Madness. Target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. And it's sort of fighting itself. Okay, so green now. Briarpack Alpha. Flash on it. Pumps another creature. Crushing Vines. Deals with creatures with flying or artifacts. Dawn Treader Elk. Got a ramp there. Oops, sorry. Needs to go in my other pack. And there's a Deranged Outcast, which is actually rare. We've sorted that. Life Gains, the thing in green. Grave Tiller Worm had Morbid on it. Nice large creature in green, no surprise there. 3 and 2 green for a 5/5, like just a vanilla creature. So 5/5 for 5. Hunger of the Howpack, another creature with Morbid on it. And you can see counters being a thing in green in this set. We've got Kessig Recluse, which was a spider with both reach, as with all spiders, but in addition to that it had Death Touch on it. Pulled a load of those. Lambhold Elder, transform card into Silver Pelt Werewolf. Scorned Villager. Lots of classics here. Oh, here we go. This is a Strangleroot, guys. So this is a 2/2. 2/1 for 2 green with haste, but also had Undying on it. A few of those. Ovenwalt Bear with Morbid on it. So we get a 2/2 for 3 with Morbid. And you can notice as well with the triggers, it's putting on +1/+1 counters. It's not just pumping it till the end of turn. It's actually, you know, pumping it for good. Another flashback with allied colours. So the green with a red flashback cost. There's a Young Wolf, another Undying card. Single green for 1/1. It becomes a 2/2 on Undying. Great. So I did, because they were uncommon, I did get a number of Lords which I pulled. So here's the Dorograph Captain, which was the one for zombies. That's the blue-black. The Drogskull Captain, which was white-blue. Immerwolf, which was red-green. Stormcourt Captain, which was the black-red. Also got Avacyn's Collar in here. So we've got some equipment, artifacts, and uncommon. Oops. Get that in shot. Chalice of Life, Executioner's Hood. Warden the Wall. Actually, this one also added Colourless Mana. It's always an interesting thing to see these sort of gargoyles in the set. So you have these artifacts which the creatures, they'll turn into a creature at certain triggers. So in this case, as long as it's not your turn, Warden of the Wall is a 2/3 gargoyle artifact creature with flying. And there's been various cards like that throughout Magic's history. So artifacts are sort of turn into a creature on a certain trigger. And then we've got Wolf Hunter's Quiver. And then a quick look at our land at common. So non-basic lands, we've got Evolving Wilds in here, different artwork. Haunted Fengreth in here as well. Okay. So there's our commons and uncommons. So next, what I want to do is we'll have a look at the seal product that they released for this, and then we'll have a look at the intro packs. So for the seal product, as I was doing quite a bit at this time, is I tended just to buy a couple of them, and so I'll dig those out now, and we'll see. We'll just quickly go through those two. I'm just trying to find the lid to this, and then we'll once we've done that and finished off with Innistrad, we'll be moving on to looking at the dual decks. Okay. so the first one I'm going to flick through is the red-green Monstrous Surprise deck. So this particular deck, there were 5 intro decks. Swift Justice, which was white-red, Relentless Dead, which was blue-black, Monstrous Surprise, this one which is red-green, Grave Player was blue-green, and Dark Sacrifice was white-black. So in this one, the foil lead card was Flower of the Hatebound. 5 in a red, 4/2, creature devil with Undying. Whenever Flower of the Hatebound or another creature enters the battlefield from your graveyard, that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. The only other rare in the deck was Gutter Grime. It's a 4 and a green. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, put a slime count on Gutter Grime, then put a green ooze creature token on the battlefield with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of slime counters on Gutter Grime. So moving on to the rest, our commons were Strangleroot, Geist, a couple of those. Pyreheart Wolf was in the deck, there were 2 of those. Skirkstag Cultist, a couple of those. A Lumberknot, a Rage Thrower, there was a Great Sword in here. Moving on to our non-creature spells, a Rolling Trembler, 2 of those. Overrun was in here, single one of those uncommon. And then moving on to our commons, we had a couple of Goblin Arsonists, a couple of Young Wolves, actually 3 Young Wolves in here. Orchard Spirit was in here, 2 of those. Russet Wolves, a couple of those. Nearheath Stalkers, you can see there's an Undying theme in here. Just looking through these cards, got 3 of those. Pitchburn Devils, and then moving on to our non-creature spells at common. Prey Upon, a couple of those. So target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. There's a couple of Flings, a Naturalize, 2 Rampant Growth from the core set. So what you're going to see in here is obviously a mix of cards, not only from Dark Ascension but also from Innistrad, and of course basically anything that would have been standard legal at the time is fair game for the Wizards to put in here. But they tend to concentrate on cards thematically that are going to fit in with the themes of the particular set. Wild Hunger, there's a green card with a red flashback, and then our artwork on here. So just quickly flick through those so you can get a feel for the artwork. So obviously we got red, green. There was no non-basic land fixing in this particular deck, which sometimes again you will get in. Normally there might be some commons that they can utilise to fix mana. And the other one was the Grave Power deck. So this was a green-blue graveyard deck, had Ghoultree in it, 7 and a green 10/10. Ghoultree costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. And that was a foil. And then the other rare was Splinter Fright, which is a 2 and a green star creature elemental with trample. Splinter Fright power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So moving on to our commons we had here, we've got Boneyard Worm, a couple of those. Alluring Siren, a single one of those. There was Towergeist. An Acidic Slime from the core set. Wreath of Geists, a couple of those. Tracker's Instinct, green with a blue flashback on it. Grim Flowering, card draw based on cards in your graveyard. Ambush Viper with Flash and Death Touch. So now we're moving on to our commons. Dawn Treader Elk, green Sack It, and then search it over for a basic land card, put that into the battlefield tapped. So you've got a way you can fix mana in here. 3 of those. Deranged Assistant, fiddles around with the graveyard, so you put the top carded library into your graveyard and add 1 colourless to your mana pool. But at that point in time, obviously, they hadn't changed the mana symbol. Brindle balls in here, armoured scab, there's 3 of those. Ether Adept, so we're seeing sort of utility from the core set. We've got a Heron Moon from the previous set, Chasm Drake from the core set, a couple of those. Hollow Henge Beast, which was I think this vanilla 3 and 2 green for 5/5. Executioner's Hoods in here. Mulch. Fill the top 4 cards of your library, put all land cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. So obviously stocking up that graveyard, but basically sifting out those lands. Gnaw to the Bone, green casting with green flashback, and then our mana base. Again, we're not seeing any non-basic lands in this particular deck here. So with this, what they do with the second smaller set is, if there's no specific artwork for thematic reasons, then what you will see is the artwork from the large set. So one thing that Wizards did was they released an event, or they released 2 event decks for this set. Oops. And an event deck, you basically got a deck plus a sideboard and a spin down counter as well. Okay, so I've reorganized this deck back to an order which makes sense for this. So this particular deck was, I believe, Birthing Pod deck. So Birthing Pod was big at the time. Birthing Pod was actually in the previous block, but it was still a thing. And you can imagine with sort of a card like Birthing Pod, which is basically, just to remind everybody, so it's 2 and a green, but it was green Phyrexian mana. So with green Phyrexian mana, you can either pay for it with green or 2 life. And for 1 and a green Phyrexian mana, tap it, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the library, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only any time you could cast a sorcery. So what you've got is this sort of Birthing Pod toolbox, which allows you to go and look for stuff. In this case, creature cards, which are related in terms of mana cost to the card you sacrificed. In this case, converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. So the idea with this is, when you're putting together like a Birthing Pod deck, what you're really trying to do is you're really paying attention to your curve. Now obviously mana curve is really important in a deck, but you are really paying extra, super attention to that. So what you're trying to do is use creature cards with ETB effects that are at a specific point on the curve that makes sense within the deck. So you're looking for real strong synergies with that Birthing Pod mechanic on there. So we'll just go through this first, and again with this sort of deck, with an event deck, we're going to see more rares than we would say in an intro deck. So Hex Parasite was one rare that was in here. Single colourless for a 1/1. X and I think black Phyrexian mana, I believe that is. Yep. Remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Hex Parasite gets X +1/+0 until end of turn. And black Phyrexian mana can be paid either with black or 2 life. So interesting thing about Hex Parasite, notice it says remove up to X counters from target permanent. That could be any permanent, so that could be Planeswalkers. And of course, in a set where you saw they were adding counters, you can see how this effect might be leveraged in this particular set, but also in the previous set. There was the presence of -1/-1 counters as well. So, you know, very, very useful synergistic card within the fact that you've got these sets where counters matter. Solemn Simulacrum was in the set, very popular commander card. The newer artwork, 4 for a 2/2 artifact creature. When Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. When it leaves the battlefield, when this dies, you may draw a card. Bloodgift Demon was in here. 3 and 2 black, 5/4 creature demon with flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Mere Battle Spheres in here. When it enters the battlefield, put 4 1/1 colourless mere artifact creature tokens onto the battlefield. Whenever Mere Battlesphere attacks, you may tap X, untap Mere you control. If you do, Mere Battlesphere gets +X/+0 till end of turn and deals X damage to defending player. And then we had 2 birthing pods. Now, again, with decks like this, you're not going to get a fully tuned deck. You know, wizards are basically leaving themselves open, so you've got to, you know, go out and crack packs. So we only get a couple of birthing pods in here. And you'll see there's a lot of like 1-ofs, 2-ofs. You might, you know, see a 4-of in here, and often in the intro in these particular event decks, there were more 4-ofs than in, say, or there tended to be more 4-ofs than, say, in an intro deck. Another rare that was in here was Grim Backwoods, and so this was utility land. Tap, add 1 to your mana pool, but the utility was for 2 black-green. You could tap it, sacrifice a creature, and draw a card. Strangleroot Geist in here, which has got Undying on it. So, you know, great sack outlet. And there was actually a full complement of those. Also, when you're sacking creatures using Birthing Pod, you can see why Undying and effects like Morbid, where with Morbid, if you remember, Morbid was caring about whether a creature died this turn, and then you know, there would be an ability that was adjusted according to that. So we've got Wake Dancer, Viridian Corruptor, which has Infect in here. So what we're hoping to see in this particular deck is lots of interesting ETB effects. We've got Skin Render. It puts -1/-1 counters on target creature when it enters the battlefield. And you can see also how that might you know, be used interestingly. Obviously you can use it to kill creatures, but there's an interesting synergy there with Hex Parasite. Now I'm just going to look, because I might be wrong there. Yeah, see that you can remove it from any permanent, so not just yours. So yeah. Acidic Slime, Death Touch. This destroys target artifact, enchantment or land as is ETB. More Corrupt Banshee's got Morbid on it. Stinger Fling Spider has target creature with flying destruction on it when it enters the battlefield. So in any Birthing Pod deck, you know, again, it's interesting to see ETBs where there's destruction on there as well, because what you're doing is you've got this ability to sort of call on certain removal cards, where the removal is an ability of a creature that you're bringing in. Brutalizer Exarch, Mortarpods in here, Diabolic Tutor, which allows you another way to sort of go and search for things. Young Wolf, so we've got full complement of those with Undying. Here's another sack outlet. Another sack outlet in the form of Viridian Emissary.
ETB on Phyrexian Rager. There's some Doom Blades in here, so there's just straight removal. And other forms of non-basic lands, we've got a couple of Evolving Wilds, which were the common ones, and then it's black-green deck, so we've got our swamps. You can see the artwork for that. Again, was pulled from the previous set, the main set of the block. Okay, so there we have our look through some of the sort of things you would see in the deck, in the main deck. Then we move on to our sideboard. So we've got Despise in here, Autumn's Veil, 3 of those, Mearsire, a Distress, 4 of those, there's a Beast Within in here, a Dismember, another Wake Dancer, Gravedigger, Entombment Exarch, and an Acid Web Spider. So all of those are going to help you sort of tweak the deck against various matchups. In some cases they're knowing the deck already, in other cases they're just beefing up a certain aspect of the deck to make it stronger against a certain matchup. So that's all of the stuff related to the actual set, the Dark Ascension set. So the final thing I want to look at is the dual decks that came out. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for these. So this, the dual decks were Venser versus Koth. They were 1999. They were the 9th dual deck to come out. So the Venser Sojourner deck was a white-blue deck. Make sure we get all the cards out. Both of these decks had emblems as well. So emblems at the time were something that Wizards had brought in to sort of help with a particular effect that often it would be generated by a planeswalker. And it was just an easy way of remembering that that effect was in action at that point in time, had been triggered or had been activated. Okay, so Venser the Sojourner was one of the cards. We've got Clone, Gale Powder Mage, Sphinx of Euthun, Sunblast Angel, and Wind Reaver. So the emblem for Venser the Sojourner was whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. So let's see how this gets triggered or gets put into action. Venser the Sojourner is 3 white-blue Planeswalker Venser, 3 loyalty, +2 exile target permanent you own. Return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. You have to apologise, I'm having actual trouble seeing the foil on this because of the foiling. Creatures are indestructible. This turn was the -1, and the -8 was you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. So the other next rare, and there were a few rares in here, as I listed earlier. So 3 and a blue Clone, 0/0, creature shapeshifter. You may have Clone enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Galpalm the Mage was a 3 and a white, 3/3, creature Kithkin Wizard with flying. Whenever Galpowder Mage attacks, exile another target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end. Oops, crikey. Wind Reaver, 3 white blue for a 1/3 creature elemental with flying. Single white Wind Reaver gains vigilance until end of turn. Single white Wind Reaver gets +0/+1 until end of turn. Single blue, switch Wind Reaver's power and toughness until end of turn. And another single blue, return Wind Reaver to its owner's hand. So you notice with all of these abilities, none require the card to be tapped. So you can, if you've got enough of the relevant mana, you can stack these up. And in the case of things, some of these you might want to stack more than once, others you wouldn't, or you want to activate. For instance, you're giving it vigilance until end of turn. Well, you can't see any compelling reason why you would want to stack vigilance.
but the plus 0 plus 1, yes. The power and toughness, you probably wouldn't want to switch it and then switch it back. And the other one, return Wind Reaver to its owner's hand again. So on here there's only really one ability that you would want to stack multiple times, but you can stack the other ones, you know, together basically. Sunblast Angel, 4/2 white for 4/5 creature angel with flying. When Sunblast Angel enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures. And Sphinx of Uthin, 5/2 blue 5/6 creature Sphinx with flying. When Sphinx of Uthin enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. And then we're just moving through the commons here. We've got Mist Meadow Witches in here, Coral Fighters, oops, that's pretty slippery still, Minamo Sight Bender, Angelic Shield, Slith Strider, a couple of those, Wall of Denial, Sky Spirit. So one thing you'll notice with these dual decks is you're going to get a lot of one-offs. They're trying to get interesting synergies in here with high variance basically. So these will stand up to sort of repeat plays, and you know, every time you play it you're going to get something slightly different, hopefully, if your shuffling's any good. Sawtooth Loon, Cryptic Annelid, Cash Raiders, Still of the Godheads in here. Really interesting cycle of these in the sort of Lorwyn, Shadowmoor block. Those sort of cards which cared about 2 colours. Oblivion Rings in here. There's also Path to Exile as well. Vanish into Memory. And then moving on to our commons, we've got Augury Owl, White Mane Lion, Scroll Thief, a couple of those, Neurok Invisimancer, Primal Plasma, Core Cartographer, Jedit's Dragoons, Sigil of Sleep, Overall, a couple of those, Safe Passage, a Preordain, 2 of those, Revoke Existence, and then because we've got a blue-white deck, you normally find pretty much, I suppose I'm tempting fate saying all the time, but in these dual decks, there's a very good chance, if it's not monocolour, you're going to get some form of fixing for those colours. Sajiri Refuge, so that's fixing for white and blue. We've got Floodplain, which is sack land that searches out for plains or islands, and then moving on to something that basically just generates white mana. So this isn't here to fix mana, but it is here to scry. A Soaring Sea Cliff, which is a blue mana generator with an ETB on it, which gets a target creature flying. Azorus Chancery, it was interesting to see the lands from the original Ravnica block in here. And then the islands, and you can see the islands here, you can sort of recognise the artwork, that sort of spiky artwork from a sort of Mirrodin themed deck basically. And you can see the different artwork here. There's basically 3 different types of artwork in each of those colours. So that's our Venser white-blue deck. So we now look at the Koth deck. So the Koth deck also had a emblem in it because the Planeswalker generated one. And the cards to look out for in terms of the rare were the lead card, the Koth the Hammer, Bloodfire Colossus, Lithophage, Torchling. There's a Journey's Kite in here, and
a volley of boulders. Okay, so our emblem for Koth is mountains you control have tap this land, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So Koth of the Hammer, 2 and 2 red, Planeswalker Koth, 3 loyalty +1, untap target mountain, it becomes a 4/4 red elemental creature until end of turn. It's still a land. -2, add red to your mana pool for each mountain you control, and a -5, you get an emblem with mountains you control have tap this land, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So what are the rares we got? We've got Journey's Kite, so 2 generic mana, for 3 colourless tap, sacrifice your library for a basic, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Torchlings in here. What did I call that, Torchling? Oh no, I did, sorry, I'm getting confused. Torchling, so another card with multiple abilities on it that can be triggered more. Each one of these can be triggered and stacked. So 3 and 2 red, 3/3, untap target Torchling is our first ability for red, and then target creature blocks Torchling this turn. Another one, change the target of target spell that targets only Torchling. So the first 3 are on red. The last 2 are both generic mana. So Torchling gets +1, -1 until end of turn. Torchling gets -1, +1 until end of turn. Now again, some of those don't make sense to stack, and some of those don't make sense to trigger multiple times. But some, you can use together. Lithophage, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Lithophage unless you sacrifice a mountain. 3 and 2 red for a 7/7 creature insect. Bloodfire Colossus, 6 and 2 red for 6/6. With red, sacrifice Bloodfire Colossus. Bloodfire Colossus deals 6 damage to each creature and each player, and it's a creature giant. And Volley of Boulders, 8 and a red sorcery. Volley of Boulders deals 6 damage, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players, and has a flashback cost of 6 red. So in this deck it's fine, from obviously a lot to cast, but this is a mono red deck, so obviously in 2 colour decks or anything more than mono red, casting that can present problems beyond the fact that it's 6 red anyway. Ether Membrane, 2 and 2 red creature wall. So we're now moving on to our uncommons. We've got Anger in here, a very interesting card in Commander. Stone Giants in here. Bloodfire Kavu, Geyser Glider with landfall on it, Greater Stone Spirit, Earth Servant, again a lot of one-offs, Volshock Morningstar, Volshock Battle Gear, Jewels of Stone, Plated Geopedes in here, and there's a couple of those, Pygmy Pyrosaur. So moving on to our uncommons, some Fiery Hellhounds in here, 3 of those, Volshock Sorcerer, Pilgrim's Eye, and there's a couple of those, Cozy's Ravager with landfall. You can see we've got landfall theme in here, so that's one of the reasons you're seeing those cards which are hunting out land. It's going to be triggering those. Shock Berserker, Charcooth Cougar, which has Mountain Cycling on it, Wayfarer's Bauble, another card you can search basic lands for. There's a couple of those. Armillary Sphere, another land search card. Searing Blaze, Seismic Strike, a couple of those depending on the mountains you control. Downhill Charge, Spire Barrage, and then our mana base, which is all red. So no red utility land in here. And you can see that I've just sorted out that so we get all the same artwork together. I think in this one, I think I'm right, there were basically 4 types of artwork for this particular deck. That's from what I can remember. Yeah. So there we have it. That's our the Venser versus Koth deck that came out March 30th of 2012. So yeah, it was a very interesting time in Magic, particularly if you really enjoy tribal, as I do. It's always nice, and it's nice to see there's a big tribal theme in the upcoming sets we've got coming soon. But the 2 things we focused on there were this dual deck, which came out in the March of 2012, and the Dark Ascension set. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.